Alright, so hi everyone, this is my first video for the channel, and in this video we're actually going to be talking about, will Jill Valentine show up in Resident Evil 8? Now, I do personally believe that we will see Jill, since, right, we haven't seen Jill in almost, 12 years? We actually haven't seen her since the events of the Kijiju incident, right, in Resident Evil 5, when Wesker took control of her. Of course, during that time, right, from 2009, we have had Resident Evil Revelations come out, but that of course was a prequel, right? That was set, right, I think a year before Lost in Nightmares, right, which was, I think, in 2006. And of course we did have a remake last year of Resident Evil 3, but we haven't heard anything, or we haven't seen Jill in the last 12 years. Right now in Revelations 2, we did actually get an email from her when we played as Barry. And in that email, right, the last thing that Jill says to Barry is that, as for me, ever since getting back, I've been locked up in this lab as they run tests on me day in and day out. And it's every bit as boring as it sounds. Rehab should be starting soon, so that's something to look forward to. But at this point, I take a battlefield full of BOWs overlooking at another test tube again. We should all meet up when I'm back and on my feet. It'll be a blast. Right? That's the last thing we heard from an email that Jill sent to Barry. And of course, Resident Evil Revelations 2 took place in between Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. Now, I think the year was 2010, right? But like I said, either way, if the events of Resident Evil 8 do take place on May of 2021, and it is present day, then that means we haven't heard or seen her in almost, well, we haven't seen her either way in almost 10 years, right? More than 10 years. And so I think, you know, as for the Resident Evil fan base, I do think that the majority of us do want to see, right, Jill Valentine, especially in Resident Evil 8. Now, whether that be in the form of her, you know, incorporating that in the story, or maybe have her show up in a DLC, right? Either way, right, I think it's safe to say that all Resident Evil fans do want to see, or the majority of Resident Evil fans do want to see her in the upcoming Resident Evil 8. Now, the other reason that I do believe that we will see Jill is due to the fact that in the trailer for Resident Evil 8, we do see Chris almost kind of looking like he's going rogue, right? We see him showing up in Ethan Winters' house and kidnapping his newborn baby. Now, and of course, in the trailer, right, the devs did mention that this is the reason why Ethan goes to the castle, right? Now, of course, trailers do lie to us sometimes, so I don't know exactly the specifics, and this is all just speculation, right? This is just a theory of mine, but what if Chris, you know, that's what the trailer is leading us to believe, is that Chris has gone rogue. Now, of course, if that is the case, then that totally makes sense that Jill would show up, right, to kind of snap him back out of reality. But if that is the story for Resident Evil 8, that Chris has truly gone rogue, as we're led to believe through the trailers, then I definitely, yeah, I would definitely bet that we're going to see Jill Valentine, right, come and try to save him, right? And we've seen that countless times in the Resident Evil series, all the way from, right, the first one, if you play as Jill, right, you save Chris, right? They've always, you know, Chris and Jill have always had a really strong bond, right? Right, and we've seen that in several games, like in Revelations 1, when Chris was rumored to be in a, right, Jill received intel that Chris was being held hostage in a ship, right? And so that starts the events of Revelation. And of course, right after those events, right, we find out that was a lie, but then all of a sudden they kidnap Jill, and it's vice versa for Chris, right? So Chris and Jessica, right, go after Jill in a different ship, right? So that's what happens in Revelations, right? But you do see both characters trying their best to save each other. And of course, we can look at the events in Lost in Nightmares, right? And so right at the end of Lost in Nightmares, when you're fighting Wesker's about to kill Chris, and all of a sudden Jill jumps and tackles Wesker to try to save Chris. And of course, in Resident Evil 5, right, what later follows is that in 3 years, Chris hasn't, you know, stopped believing that Jill is alive, right? And so for those 3 years, he still kept on believing and kept chasing any leads that he could to try to save Jill, right? And so obviously there is a strong connection, right? Especially if, you know, Jill was pronounced dead in 2006, but Chris didn't believe that, and so he was on the hunt to try to find her, right? To try to find his friend. And so that, of course, sets off in motion the events of Resident Evil 5, right? Where Chris finds out that Jill is alive, and on top of that is being, is a hostage to to Wesker, right? It's kind of like Wesker's lab rat. And so obviously, like I was saying, right, these two characters have known each other for a long time. And obviously they're really good friends. The amount of dedication to jump and protect your friend from getting killed, and then you kind of committing suicide by jumping off a window with the villain, that takes a lot of, there's definitely a strong bond there, right? And so if we are to believe what the trailers of Resident Evil 8 are telling us, right, that Chris has gone rogue and he's doing all this stuff, then of course I do think that we will see Jill, right, in the game. I mean, we have to, right? I mean, like these characters have had their backs, right? They've had each other's backs for years. And so, if Chris is at his lowest point, then of course it would make sense that Jill would show up, right? And the other reason, but of course, one could also say that in Resident Evil 6, after Chris lost his whole platoon, right? And he kind of went to and stuck around in Adonia and just was stuck in a bar, kind of just in self-pity, he was in depression, obviously. Yeah, one can say, well, where was Jill during that time, right? Well, we don't actually know, right? And we don't know what's actually happened to Jill since the events of the Kijuju incident, right? And so we don't know if she was still in the lab during the events of Resident Evil 6, which take place in 2012 and I think 2013, right? And of course, we did get a message from Jill, which is what I just showed you, right, with Barry, that was back in 2010. And so maybe, Jill couldn't go and help Chris, right, with his depression during Resident Evil 6. We don't know, right? And the other point I could also bring up is that, I don't think anybody knew where Chris was. I think the only person that could go and dedicate the time to look for Chris was Piers Nivens at the time, right? And so he was the one that kind of snapped him back to reality. And so, like I said, right, if this is what's happening in Resident Evil 8, then I definitely, 100%, right, I could put my money and bet that we will see Jill Valentine in Resident Evil 8. And like I mentioned before, right, we actually haven't heard anything from the character for Jill Valentine, right? We haven't seen her in the CGI movies. And what we know now from the new CGI movies that are coming out, right, with Leon and Claire, those are the only characters that have been named for that show that's going to come out on Netflix right later this year. Like I mentioned, right, we're just going to have to wait until Resident Evil 8. Like I said, right, this is all just speculation. This is what I believe, right? This is just my theory that we will see Jill Valentine in Resident Evil 8. And that's going to happen soon, right? We're just a couple months away, and I'm super excited. So fingers crossed. And so I do hope that we do see this beloved character again, right, in the Resident Evil universe. And so let me know what you guys think, right? Do you guys think that we'll see Jill in Resident Evil 8, or maybe not, right? Let me know down in the comments. And so if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to knife that like button and shoot that subscribe button in the face. And I'll see you guys on the next one. The right to be a god. That right is now mine.